Today, Edward Snowden, the elusive NSA leaker, who we have not seen since he reportedly landed at a Moscow airport 3 weeks ago, has resurfaced. And this time, we have pictures to prove it. This morning, an absolutely crazy scene unfolded in Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport, where reporters who have been camped out in the airport for almost a month without ever seeing Snowden got word he would finally be speaking to a group of human rights activists. Reporters mobbed the attendees as they were leaving the meeting, hoping for any bits of news. It was reportedly a tense scene where at least one fistfight erupted between two cameramen who punched each other in the ribs. Snowden spoke to the group for 45 minutes, opening with a description of the life he left behind, captured by the Russian news outlet Life News.
A little over 1 month ago, I had a family, a home in paradise, and I lived in great comfort. I also had the capability, without any warrant of law, to search for, seize, and read your communications. Anyone's communications at any time. That is the power to change people's fates.
According to a transcript released by WikiLeaks, Snowden said that his goal is to get to Latin America. In the meantime, is requesting asylum in Russia until such time as these states accede to law and my legal travel is permitted. Russia at this point hasn't confirmed they've received the asylum request, but repeated that Snowden should, quote, refrain from actions inflicting damage on our American partners if he wants asylum. Now, if tensions before today were high between the U.S. and Russia, they are now next level bad.
I would simply say that providing a propaganda platform for Mr. Snowden runs counter to the Russian government's previous declarations of Russia's neutrality. I think we would urge the Russian government to afford human rights organizations the ability to do their work in Russia throughout Russia, not just at the Moscow Transit Lounge.
Within the last few hours, Obama and Putin actually spoke by phone about Edward Snowden. Now, we don't know what was said on that call and certainly don't know what will happen to Edward Snowden. But today we do know that Edward Snowden is in Russia and working in some capacity with the approval, at least, of the Russian government. The White House is not at all happy about it. Joining me now on the phone from Rio de Janeiro is Glenn Greenwald, columnist on civil liberties and U.S. national security issues for The Guardian newspaper. Glenn broke the Edward Snowden story in The Guardian. Glenn, my first question to you is, why do you think after this holding pattern, after these long weeks where we hadn't seen Edward Snowden, why did today happen?
The reason is because his ability to get to the countries where he's seeking asylum and hopes to receive asylum has been thwarted by the willingness of the United States government physically to block him from being able to get there. They revoked his passport, which prevents him from traveling. They've signaled to the world that they will physically impede an airplane, which they did with the jet carrying the Bolivian president that they mistakenly thought had Edward Snowden on it. And they put pressure on all the countries that could be possible refueling stops in order for him to get there. And that's why the ACLU and Amnesty are both warning that what the Obama administration is doing is threatening this very well-recognized right of asylum. There's simply no way for him to get out at the moment, and that's why he sought the help of these human rights organizations.
So one concern I think a lot of people watching this have, and I will actually count myself among them, as someone who is happy to know the things I know because of Edward Snowden, happy to have that information, think that information is crucial, and we'll talk about the Microsoft story in a second, is that he has now been, it's unclear to me with how much autonomy this man could possibly be acting. I mean, we know the nature of Vladimir Putin. We know the nature of the Russian state at this moment. And in fact, any state, if the Russian version of Edward Snowden showed up at the Miami International Airport, the CIA would be there the next day. So it doesn't seem ridiculous to me to assume at this point that those 10,000 files that he has with him, that he brought to you to screen with rigor and clarity, are now in the hands, conceivably, of Russian intelligence. And that doesn't seem like the best way for this to have gone.
I think what you just described is exactly what you called it, which is an assumption. And I would add it's a very speculative assumption, one for which there's no evidence, and I think that runs counter to the evidence that we know. Remember, this is a person who threw away his entire life, as he said in the beginning of that statement that you just played. He had a girlfriend, a longtime girlfriend, a family who loves him. I get emails from them all the time asking me to pass on best wishes and love to him. He had a very stable career, a lucrative job, and he threw it away because he wanted not to destroy the United States or harm the United States, which he could easily have done by selling the information, but to provoke a debate. And he was willing to sacrifice all of his interests, including his freedom, in order to have that. So the idea that he would then suddenly start turning over secrets to Russia or China, which he could have done early on and gotten a lot of money for it, is very implausible to me, especially since I've been in contact with him over the past week, and he's very clear about the fact that he's free to leave Russia at any time, that the only barrier in his way is the United States.
And you think that's true? You do not think that he, I mean, has he talked to you about, I mean, I'm not saying this about the nature of Edward Snowden. I'm talking about the nature of the Russian state and Vladimir Putin, who spent his whole life in the KGB and, like, you know, doesn't necessarily play patty cake when this stuff is on the table. So you're saying that he just has not had interactions with Russian intelligence?
I think there's a lot of different factors at play besides the fact that the Russian government would like to get their hands on this information. It's the same thing with China. You know, the New York Times basically made up the claim,
yes,
which they phrased in terms of this might have happened, that the Chinese government drained his laptop, something that he insists didn't happen, that and all the things I saw when I was in Hong Kong with him simply didn't happen, because there's a lot of different considerations that the Chinese had, including wanting him gone so that they didn't complicate their relationship with the world. And I think
Russia would like to see him gone as well. Quickly, there was a scoop you had yesterday about the NSA and Microsoft working together. What do you think the significance of it? I read it, and it seemed to me that the most charitable interpretation possible is that they are creating the technical capability to be able to, in the future, execute lawful kind of searches for items they want. What do you think is worrisome about that scoop?
The Silicon Valley companies have continuously said that they only do the bare minimum the law requires to work with the NSA, and what this shows is this constant collaboration and collusion on the part of Microsoft to build systems to allow all sorts of access to Skype, to Outlook, to these cloud systems, way beyond what the law requires. And the idea that they need a warrant in each individual case is untrue. They only need a warrant when they're targeting American citizens, not when they're scooping up all kinds of communications, including ones involving Americans.
Glenn Greenwald from The Guardian, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
We'll be right back with Click 3.